Ready for session 2, Rasika? Sudama, are you there?
Yes, Maharaj, I am here.
Can we go?
Yes, Maharaj.
We're now going to sing. We're going to sing. We're in Singapore. We're going to hope it's not too poor, the singing. Singapore Ki Jai. Singapore is the city of the lion. Lord Nrsingadev. Singha is lion, Pura is city. That's good enough for me. I don't need to see myself. Is that okay? Are you there? Where's the devotees? Oh, they're all on Facebook. They're not on Zoom. Is that right, Sudama?
Yeah, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj. You're just being projected to Facebook in a second.
Fantastic.
Prabhuji is doing that.
Haribol, everybody in Singapore. Good evening. Wonderful to be with you all again. Thank you for your sincere devotion there in Singapore. So today, kindly you've invited me to speak something from Bhagavad Gita. I'll try to say a few words. Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvasesha Sunyavari Astya Chadesha Tarine. All together.
Gauravani Pracharine Nirvasesha Sunyavari
Astya Chadesha Tarine. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bolo, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Gauranga. Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hey, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Ram Sankirtan ki jai. Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai. Go Premanandi. All glorious to the assembled devotees. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Name Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Pastacharya Shatani. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Shvayam Upakatam Maya Dadati Svapadantika Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakama Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhamrita Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandha Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Ishapanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today, this evening, this morning, this afternoon, whatever it is, time is eternal. It's neither day nor night in reality. It's the relative perspective of time in this material world. We are reading from the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and it's text number 5. Maybe we can put it on the board, Nasika. It should be coming up. Here we go. Text number 5 or 4? Oh, okay. Got the wrong verse. Someone I thought it was 5. Okay, it's text number 4 today. Take it outside. Go outside the door. Similar subject. Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga. Pritag Balaha. Pritag Balaha. Pravadanti. Pravadanti. Na panditaha. Na panditaha. Ekam. Ekam. Api. Astitaha. Astitaha. Samyak. Ubayor. Vindate. Phalam. Sankhya Yoga Pritag Bala. Sankhya Yoga Pritag Bala. Pravadanti na panditaha. Ekam apyastita samyak. Ubaya vindate palam. Sankhya Yoga Pritag Bala. Sankhya Yoga Pritag Bala. Pravadanti na panditaha. Pravadanti na panditaha. Ekamapyastitak samyag. Epapyastitak samyag. Ubayor vindate palam. Ubayor vindate palam. Sankhya Yoga Pritag Bala. Pritag Bala. Pravadanti na panditaha. Ekamapyastitak samyag. Ubaya vindate palam. Now we do the word for word. Sankhya, analytical study of the material world. Yoga, working devotional service. Pritak, different. Balaha, the less intelligent. Pravadanti, say, no, never. Panditaha, the learned. Ekam, in one. Api, even. Astitaha, being situated. Samyak, complete. Ubayaho, of both. Vindate, enjoys. Palam, the result. Hare Krishna. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Only ignorant speak of devotional service, Karma Yoga, as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned, that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. Purport. The aim of the analytical study of the material world is to find the soul of existence. The soul of the material world is Vishnu, or the Supersoul. Devotional service to the Lord entails service to the Supersoul. One process is to find the root of the tree, and the other is to water the tree. Water the root. The real student of Sankhya philosophy finds the root of the material world, Vishnu, and then in perfect knowledge engages himself in the service of the Lord. Therefore, in essence, there is no difference between the two. The aim of both is Vishnu. Those who do not know the ultimate end say that the purpose of Sankhya and the purpose of Karma Yoga are not the same. But one who is learned knows the unifying aim in these different processes. Hare Krishna. End of purport. This has been an interesting experience because I got the impression that we were studying fifth chapter, text 2. So I started to meditate on fifth chapter, text 2, a few days ago, and I started just putting a few things together. And then I got the impression it is fifth chapter, text 5. So I put something together to text 5. And now I realize it's text 4. So we'll see what Krishna arranges, because I haven't directly prepared for this verse. However, this verse is more or less parallel to the next verse. In fact, all these verses are very similar in indication. Only the ignorant speak of devotional service as being different from the analytical study of the material world. Those who actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. So just like in our last class, some of you were with us, we were studying Lord Kapilada's teachings, and we were seeing two aspects of the particular verse. One was the primary characteristic of a sadhu, and the other was a secondary characteristic. Here we also find, in most verses, you find different characteristics are there. And this verse we have the different paths, but the primary one is that the result is the same. Of course, that depends whether we're on the path or not. And as we see in the Bhagavad Gita, if you turn to the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there's a significant verse in the 4th chapter. They're all significant, but there's one in the 4th chapter, text 11, which really kind of captures the subject matter here. Ye tamam papajati tam sataiva vijamyaham. Manavatante manush partasavata. That as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, Lord. This can be seen in different ways. The Lord is reciprocating in the heart with every living entity, and everything that exists in one sense is the path of the Lord. The living entity cannot create. By desire, we can say we are the cause, but we're not the creator. Creation is done through the Krishna's directly for his devotees and indirectly through the material energy. We have so many different facets of this world which we're in. So many paths are there in this world, but they're all ultimately have their roots in Krishna. Even the pursuit for material happiness is a perverted reflection of the pursuit for spiritual happiness. Everything's a reflection of the spiritual realm in this world. And the various paths in this world which people follow, some people are just following the path of big karma, sinful activity. The objects of their sense gratification are provided by Krishna. The faith and the determination, everything else is given by Krishna. Living entity has desire. Some people are following karma, they're more pious. They're following religious directions to try to elevate themselves, materially at least. And very few are following the path of akarma. And within these paths, akarma means transcendental activities with no reaction. Within the realm of these various activities, there are many other paths, specific paths given to achieve various goals. According to a particular goal, Krishna is making arrangements for living entities to follow different paths. He makes their faith strong to worship the demigods, or to worship ordinary people, or to pursue a particular goal in life. Krishna gives the intelligence from Here comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. Krishna is the source of that drive, you can say. The soul of desire is there, but the ability to enact that drive, even remember that, is given by Krishna. He's the source of everything. So whether it's analytical study of nature, which is extreme. I mean, the scientists are studying, but their study is basically speaking stolen by illusion. Maya Pritagyan. They're in Maya, they're in illusion. They see it as being nothing but material. They're not following any other path other than their own, let's say, experimentation, their own sense perception. They're not following Shakti-Praman. They're not following something which is given, awarded by the Lord, directed, awarded, but it's not given in the Shastra. They're not following the Shastric directions. So they're in ignorance, following the path of ignorance, speculating in the darkness. But they're pursuing some form of knowledge. In one sense, ultimately, it would be seen that ultimately they come to a conclusion. And even personalities like Einstein, it said that the more he studied science, the more he realized he didn't know anything. The more he became convinced there must be a supreme being behind everything. Sometimes when there's a little humility, one may come to that. But generally speaking, by material pursuit alone, we'll go around in circles. One can never, with material senses, understand beyond material, say, modes of nature. One cannot go any further. One cannot even understand how the modes are working, because one is under the modes. One has to be above the modes, or at least hear from transcendental knowledge, which is above the modes, to understand what is above the modes of nature. So that type of path, although in one sense everything is coming from Krishna, does not lead in of itself to Krishna. Whereas other paths, Sankhya Yoga, which is mentioned here, the path of analysis, genuine analysis, sometimes it may be seen as philosophical or speculative, but it's done according to the Vedic type directives. It's not just according to one's own karmic conditioning, but it's guided by Vedic or spiritual directives. So if done properly, can also lead. And you can see, if we go to the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is, quite a, most of us find this quite a challenging chapter in terms of understanding. But if we go to the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we'll see therein a little interesting. Arjuna is asking questions, penetrating questions, the kind of the questions that persons on the path of Gyan may ask about, what is knowledge, who is a knower, what is to be known, what is action, what is all these different things. He wants to know wants to know things, what is the body, and so on and so forth. Who is the living being? And so Krishna replies to him, now please hear my brief description of this field of activity and how it is constituted, what its changes are, whence it is produced, who that knower of the field of activities is, and what his influences are. Knowledge is given to us. The conditioned soul doesn't know. So he has to pursue a path which brings about knowledge. Knowledge, material, we have material knowledge, we have avidya, we have vidya. So the vidya, which we're talking about here, this knowledge of the material world, is meant to release us from avidya. It's not just knowledge to keep us in give us a better situation within the material world. It's different. Avidya, or knowledge that was separated from its origins, seemingly, does not release us. Knowledge of how to be happy within a prison is not going to release us from a prison. We may know what time lunch is. We may know what the materials are made of. We may know the name of the water. We may know what we can do and what we can't do, what the result of doing what we can't do is. But that's not going to release us from the prison. In of itself, we have to have knowledge which will release us from the prison. We have to have knowledge which will release us from the material world. So Sankhya is a pursuit also, should be, based upon, Vedic principle, upon principles of understanding, applying logic and reason. Yes, but it has to be applied according to the Vedic directives, not just according to our condition only. So then Krishna goes on, the knowledge of the field of activities and of the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect. We're very busy studying the effects in the material world, and we're trying to come to some causal conclusions. But the causal conclusions of this world are also effectual. Even in our own lives, we enact so many activities, but they're based upon subtle desires and tendencies, which are also effects of previous causes. They're simply effects. We may think they're the causes of our activity. We may think the cause of our of our tendencies in this life is the birth, the genes that we receive from our mother and father. But that's an effect. It's an effect of a previous cause. The whole material world is based on cause and effect. But we don't find the cause behind it. We just go around. One thing leads to another, and we never reach the end. We're going around in circles. So spiritual knowledge, the actual conclusion, the path, the unity is to find the common cause behind it. Otherwise, we argue what is the cause, because everyone's got a different karma. Everyone's got a different condition. And we have different religions to fit different conditions. We have different philosophies. People come up with different philosophies because they have different conditionings. And thus we argue. And there's a very interesting analogy, story given of 6 blind men of Hindustan. An elephant did they go to see, but they can't see anything because they're blind. One of them grabs the leg and thinks the elephant must be a tree trunk. The other one grabs the tail and thinks it must be a rope. Another one grabs the trunk and thinks it's a pipe. Another one grabs the what do you call this? White thing, what do you call it? Sharp thing.
Horns.
Not the horn, no. Tusk, the elephant tusk, and thinks it's like a spear. Another one grabs the tummy and thinks the elephant's like an enormous barrel. And the other one grabs the ear and thinks it's like a flag. Well, they're all partially in the right, but they're all in the wrong. This is what happens. We're looking from our own very limited conditional perspective, and things are always changing around us. So it just becomes very confusing, constantly changing. This is a situation of those who are on the path of speculation. But the path of Gyan is not exactly like that. It may include that kind of thing, but it's based upon, Vedanta Sutra is based upon Vedic directions also. Otherwise, it's agyan, it's ignorance. So it has to be like, in relationship with authorized knowledge or an authorized practice of yoga is not a speculation. Most people's idea of yoga is stretching your body, doing a few breathing exercises so you're more fit for sense gratification. But that's not yoga at all. Yoga is a bona fide process given by the Lord through various sages or through various scriptures we can find, giving us direction of how we can control our senses and behave in such a way that we gradually start to realize who we are and realize the truth and rise above and understand how the modes of nature are working. So those who are generally on the path of Sankhya Yoga, they study the material phenomena in this light, not in the light of trying to enjoy it, but in the light of understanding and how to get out of it, how to become free of the encasement which we're in, or the entanglement which we're in the material world. So then Krishna goes on to explain a little bit about this pursuit for analysis of the material energies. In of itself, again, it's not enough. It may help us to become somewhat detached from the material energy, but it's not enough. The 5 great elements: false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms, and convictions. All these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. There's a cause and effect within the material world. They study this very intensely, very deeply, trying to break it down. Science is the same principle, but it's just devoid of its connection with the cause, at least from their point of view. Nothing is ultimately devoid of it. They're seeing it as devoid. They don't, the first consideration is don't consider God practically. when seen in relationship with the Supreme Being, then it becomes a tool to help realize one's actual position and detach oneself, free oneself from identification with all the various material elements, etc. Release oneself. But separately, otherwise it doesn't do that if it's done without connection with the Supreme Being, or the origin of everything. So then Krishna explains in the next verse, in the 13th chapter, what real knowledge is. And of course he talks about the path of devotional service, etc., and the qualities, etc., which are required to get out of this world. Simply knowledge alone. I'll give you an example one time. There were two people sat underneath an apple tree. And I'm sure we've all seen an apple tree. And all of a sudden, well, there's a bird on the tree. And the bird flies away. At the same time the bird flies away, an apple falls down, pop on the ground. So one of them saying, the apple fell because the bird flew. The other say, no, the bird flew because the apple fell. And they're arguing with each other. And the devotee comes along, picks up the apple, offers it to Krishna. Prasadam, Hare Krishna, thank you, Krishna. So we can sit here arguing from our own perspectives, and we can't prove that I'm right or you're right and you're wrong. We may vote on it. We may fight with each other. Prabhupada gives the example sometimes of a man who's arguing with another man, and they're arguing over what utensil to use. Shall I use a knife or shall we use a scissor? And one of them says scissors. The other says knife. And they start fighting over nothing. Well, they're fighting over something, but there's nothing of value. And they argue with each other, and knife says, look, mate, if you don't accept what I'm saying, I'm going to throw you in the river. No, scissors, I'm not going to accept you. Okay, and then they start fighting, and the knife man throws the scissors man into the river, and the poor fellow can't swim. So he's going to drown in the river. Hey! And as he's going down, he puts his fingers up. Scissors, scissors, scissors. Blub, blub, blub. Scissors, scissors, scissors. Won't give up. They're so stubborn. No humility. Can't see beyond their own scissors or their own knives, their own limited perspectives. So the Sankhya Yoga is supposed to take us beyond that. That's why it's said that when it sees of the two, that both paths are there, but it's a nice purport. I'm going to read you a little bit now from Baladev Vidyabhushan. I think if I can find. Okay. This is the commentary of Baladev Vidyabhushan on this verse. So the real point mentioned here is to understand there are different paths, bona fide paths also. There are unbona fide paths in terms of self-realization. But there are bona fide paths. Sankhya is one of them. But it's a very difficult path. It's not easy. And as mentioned herein, of the various paths, some are easier than others. That's the essential thing. Asking which of the two is better does not arise. The fools, not the wise men, will say that karma yoga and jnana yoga are different because of thinking that they have different fruits. Performing one, a person attains the result of both. So they're the same in their result, although they're externally, the form may seem different. Different people, different persons, different conditionings, but ultimately the same in as much as the result is the same. And it's the result which counts. Whether you get a degree by this method or that method, the result is the same. You get a degree. Whether you get $1 million by this method or that method, the result is you've got $1 million. Different paths, you could say. But the result is the same because the ultimate effect is the same. In the material world, different paths do not lead to the same effect. They lead to different effects, different karmas. But if one follows the genuine paths of yoga, spirituality, the effect is the same. One gets freed from this material world. However, of course, there is also, on that platform, there are differences too, but the ultimate effect is realization of the self and detachment from this world. What happens then is another thing, but at this stage, we're only talking about this. the steady, so as I said, I prepared a little bit for another verse, but I'll mention it anyway. The steady position, which is what is received, is all sthanam. Dhanam means steady, of seeing the soul, is attained by jnana yogis, those who are on the path of Sankhya Yoga, and by karma yogis. Karma yoga is a stage of bhakti. It's a forerunner of bhakti, of pure devotional service, offering the fruits of one's work in devotion. And he knows, Pashyati, that they are one because of having one result. There's no real difference because they have one result. That's the key, to get one result. There may be different types of medicines, but the result should be the same, that you get cured. So they have the same purpose, same goal. They have their right, they have their in particular circumstance, they have their position. Thus the forms are different. One being renunciation of actions. Generally speaking, in the path of Sankhya, Stanga Yoga and other yogas, renunciation, control of the senses, renunciation is control of the senses is common in all practices of spirituality. Regulation, control of the senses practice. Krishna tells this to Arjuna, when Arjuna is perplexed about, my goodness, what you're telling me now is very, very hard to perform. In the 6th chapter, Krishna gives Arjuna a direction to perform Ashtanga Yoga. And Arjuna says, this is too difficult for me. I can't do this. My mind is more difficult to control than the raging wind. How do you expect me to do this? Yes, it's difficult, but by regular practice and detachment, it is possible. So that's the path. You have to restrain the senses, very difficult. And as far as Jnana Yoga, generally speaking, it's the study of the Vedanta Sutras also involved with the Vedas. It's very, very hard to ascertain what is the truth with their limited senses, especially in Kali Yuga. And the analytical study through Sankhya of the material elements also need a lot of help, a lot of guidance. It's not easy to ascertain. So these paths are there, but they're very difficult, Krishna states. They're very difficult. Although the ultimate goal is the same. In the Bhagavad Gita, we see that Krishna says, Bahunam jamanante gyanavam pajite vasudeva sarvaniti samahatma sudurabha. After many, many lives, those who are on this path of knowledge, trying to study, analyze the material world, they eventually, after many, many lifetimes, surrender unto me. Of course, there are different types of jnanas. Some jnanas, some pursuants of yoga, they have a different goal. Their goal is to merge into the Brahman, so it's another thing, but still it's transcendental. But those who are, fortunate come in contact with Bhakti, and then they can engage in full devotional service. Those whose hearts are not so envious, they have a little humility. Even in personal meditation, in personal objective goal, is still self-centered. So when we use a path, even Bhakti, we use it for our own fulfillment of our material desires. And that's another thing. Because in the path of Bhakti, as we mentioned earlier, kama sava kama va moksha kama davati. But still, by the grace of Krishna, sometimes that selfish motivation can be cleared up in the association of sadhus. But if our motivation is so selfish, then generally speaking, one is not to be expected to reach the ultimate goal. At least it will take a long, long time, very long time, lifetime after lifetime. Same with the jnanis. It may take a long, long, long time. So Baladeva Vijayabhushana carries on. The other being engagement in action. One who sees that the goal is the same, that both paths have the same objective goal, spiritual realization, release from illusion, is a wise man. He sees properly, sapashyati, sees properly. The word sthanam here means in which they remain situated. Steady. In the material world, we're not sthanam, everything's constantly changing. Our position is constantly changing. Bodies, mentalities, everything's changing. The one who comes to self, who understands these paths by one means or another, comes to the steady state, realizing Atma, realizing the self. And there's no question of, duality there. The words, means never fall. We never fall. Sankhya and yoga are used to mean persons having Sankhya and yoga skills. They're temporary. It's not in the spiritual world. People aren't going around and say, are you a Sankhya yogi? Are you a karma yogi? Are you a jnana yogi? Did you come here by Sankhya yoga or jnana yoga? To mean nothing. Yeah, when it's on the spiritual platform, all these things are dreams, gone, finished, over. Just like we forget our dreams when we wake up in the morning. We forget our previous lives with the cause of our present life. It's over, it's gone, it's a material thing, material interaction. Tatastha is interaction, but tatastha means, in this case, it means that which is marginal, that which is interacting with something which is not standard, internal, in this case. It's a process which, if properly followed, helps us to get out of this external energy. The soul is marginal. So a process which helps us to realize our marginal nature is given yogas for that reason. And it goes further, of course, to realize our relationship as well. But in of itself, we're not discussing that. So therefore, instead of the normal meaning of Sankhya and Yoga, according to this rule, according to the rule of Arsha Adyach, this is some Sanskrit terms here, it refers to the externals, the different skills or the practices, the process which different practitioners are following. It's not the practice is the important thing. It's not trying to enjoy the stages of the practice, which is the important thing. It's reaching the goal. And unless one reaches the goal, as we see in the 4th chapter, Krishna there in the 4th chapter also describes various means for transcendental knowledge, various means of attaining transcendental knowledge. But unless it comes to transcendental knowledge, Prabhupada describes, it is merely a material activity, even though it may appear to be more elevated. It simply remains a material activity, unless it comes to transcendental platform. The secret of coming to the transcendental platform, of course, is only by the grace of Krishna. It is not achievable by a practice of yoga. It is not achievable by study of the scriptures. It is not achievable by jnana yoga. It is not achievable by Ashtanga yoga or Sankhya yoga. We may, for whatever faith reasons, we may take to these practices, but the realization of the actual truth behind it is only by the grace of Krishna. So every practice, whatever it may be, must be tinged with some degree of bhakti. We could say that if one's following the Vedic scriptures, it means we're knowingly or unknowingly following Krishna's instruction. So there is something there. But there has to be some bhakti to make progress towards the ultimate goal of self-realization. We're going to read something now. Here we are. I have to go back here. Just give me a second. How do I get to what I want to behind that screen? As I say, I'm sorry, I wasn't completely prepared for this. But here we go. So we're hearing here particularly two paths in describing, two paths to get to the ultimate goal. Two paths. One easy, one is difficult. And this applies whether we're aspiring for Brahman, whether we're aspiring for Paramatma realization or Bhagavan realization, whatever level of realization it is. These paths have to be followed. It's not possible to access or to reach without following a bona fide path, whether it's Karma Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. One has to follow the path properly to reach the goal, whatever it is. And it's interesting how Prabhupada, when he talks about Karma Yoga, he refers to Bhakti Yoga rather than Karma Yoga. Because it's much easier. As we see in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, if you want to go there, 12th chapter, text number 5, Krishna explains, because Arjuna is again asking questions, as this section of the 5th chapter starts off with Arjuna appearing to be perplexed. You're giving me different instructions, Arjuna, and they seem to be contradictory. I don't understand. Tell me clearly, what is the right thing to do? He asked the same basic question in the third chapter. And people get this idea that spiritual life is something like opposed to material life in terms of, action at least. Got this idea that it means, meditation or just intellectual pursuit. And then again, you tell me to act. So what am I supposed to do, Krishna? What is my path? So Krishna explains that in the third chapter. You can read it in the beginning of the third chapter quite clearly. What is the right thing to do? Not by renunciation alone or not acting, so to speak. If you want to achieve perfection, persons who are still very much inclined towards material sense objects, who are still very much under the modes of nature, it's very hard for them to become detached. Practically speaking, they have to be engaged. That applies to us too. Karma yoga is a pre-runner to bhakti yoga. It means engaging ourselves, engaging our senses actively. Prabhupada said spiritual life is not armchair philosophy, it's action. Engaging our senses actively in service of Krishna. That way we become purified. It's not just a question of detachment. As we become purified, we automatically become detached. And not only become detached in this world, we become attached to Krishna. That's the important thing. Unless the senses are engaged in good work, it will be difficult to stop improper work. They need engagement. It's foolish to think that we can just cut off from the material world when we're still attached to it. Krishna says that those who withdraw their senses from the sense objects, but his mind dwells in sense objects, are fools and pretenders. We've got to engage our senses. Shouldn't think we're some better. Prabhupada writes in one point, we said better to be a simple road sweeper than a charlatan meditator, one who's so-called meditation, he's actually attached to gross and subtle results. It's not the point. It has to be genuine. It has to be appropriate according to our state of involvement or consciousness. So karma yoga is very practical. And of the two, it's very easy because it engages our senses. And thus constantly purifies our heart and involves in detachment. Superiors. Therefore, in that sense, is a superior path. And that's described by Krishna in the 12th chapter, where generally the Jnana Yogis, they're more inclined towards ultimate goals of reaching the unmanifested Brahman, the supreme Brahman, merging into the Brahma Jyoti. So the Lord asked, Arjuna asked this question, which are considered more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman? Who is more perfect? They're both transcendental. The Lord says, those who worship my form, always engaged in worshipping me, are considered to be the most perfect. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me. They can be. Doesn't mean at last achieve me. It could be they stay in the Brahma Jyoti. And generally speaking, we understand that those who reach that level of realization do not, it's very different. There's no devotional interaction in the Brahman. They come back to this material world. We'll hear about that in a minute. But those who worship, those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the supreme, advancement is very troublesome, Krishna says. So those who follow that path, advancement is very troublesome. The only result is their hard work which they undergo. It's very arduous, trying to withdraw the senses, mind from the sense objects, trying to control one's desires, etc., and so on. And what are you fixing your mind on? What is the objective? It depends. Sometimes those who are envious also fix their mind on Krishna, but only as a stepping stone to becoming Krishna or to merge into the Brahman. Their intention is not devotional service. So as they surrender to me, Krishna reciprocates accordingly. And that's what they'll get, unless they get the good fortune of a saintly association, which may change their motives. But it's very hard because it's It's not based just upon association. It's based upon the desire in the conscious living entity. Her degree of envy of the Lord. So different paths may be there, but the results may not always be the same. To make progress in this discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. If we're in a material body, we're surrounded by material situations under the modes of nature. Then Krishna goes on, for those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, are always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha. For them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. This is the big difference. Those who are taking shelter of Krishna, Krishna is there. Prabhupada gives the example of a monkey and a kangaroo. The monkey carries its baby on its, the baby has to hold on to the monkey. If you've ever been to India, many of you are from India, you'll see the monkeys there, especially in Vrindavan, so many of them. And the monkey is grabbing onto the mother and sometimes falls off. But the kangaroo carries the baby kangaroo in a pouch, completely protected by the mother. So those are on the path of, although the goal is the same, the very dangerous, more risky, more difficult path of Sankhya or Jnana or these other paths. Because you have to, basically speaking, we're trying to climb up. There's the ascending and there's a descending path. So the ascending path, we're trying fighting against it, trying to understand, analyzing, trying to withdraw your senses, speculating on this and that, experimenting, so many things. Very difficult path. The path of bhakti is we just hear, accept Krishna's mercy, and engage ourselves in devotional service. Chanting, hearing, remembering, worshipping, and so on. It's so easy, and we can carry on with our daily activities, but in devotion, so much easier. Same result. A much easier one, because ultimately the result is given by Krishna anyway. We can't get it otherwise. And in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a famous verse there. Yen ye vivindaksha vimuktamanyas playasta bhavada vishuddha buddhya aruya krishnena parampadam tata patanchidona vita yushmadam vrayamam. Someone may say that aside from devotees, who always seek shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, there are those who are not devotees, but who have accepted different processes for attaining salvation. What happens to them? In answer to this question, Lord Brahman, the other demigod, said, O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities and penances to achieve the highest position may think themselves liberated, their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for your lotus feet. Ultimately, unless we get shelter at the lotus feet, we are not secure. Whatever path we follow, if it doesn't lead to shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, we haven't really achieved the ultimate goal. Partial achievement, maybe, beyond the modes of nature. Something in common, but not the ultimate thing, unless we come to that point. Aside from devotees, Prabhupada writes, there are many others, non-devotees, known as karmis, dhyanis, yogis, and so on. Can you move the picture, please? Philanthropists, altruists, politicians, impersonalists, voidists. There are many varieties of non-devotees who have their respective ways of liberation. But simply because they do not know the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, they falsely think that they have been liberated, elevated to the highest position, but they fall down, as clearly stated by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Ashradana Purusha Dharmasyasya Parantapa Aprapya Mam Nivartante Mityu Samsara Vartmani. Those who are not faithful on the path of devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of foes. But they return to birth and death in this material world. It doesn't matter whether one is a karmi, jnani, yogi, philanthropist, politician, or whatever. If one has no love for the lotus feet of the Lord, one falls down. That is the verdict given by Lord Brahma in this verse. There are persons who advocate accepting any process and who say that whatever process one accepts will lead to the same goal, but that is refuted in this verse, where such persons are referred to as vimuktamani, signifying that although they think they have attained the highest perfection, in fact they have not. So unless the path leads to the lotus feet of the Lord, we're insecure. Although it may lead, by the grace of Krishna, it may lead to liberation, but that's not the goal. In the Chaitanya Bhagavad is a beautiful verse in the Chaitanya Bhagavad at Adhikanda 270. Although renunciation and austerity are employed as means of getting relief from the misery of the world, if they are not engaged in the service of the Hokshaja, they fail to produce the desired results. All kinds of renunciation and austerity are subsidiary eternal assets of devotees who chant the names of the Supreme Lord. The endeavors of those who give up chanting the holy names and separately engage in renunciation and austerity are all useless. Communities of renunciates and ascetics aim for material enjoyment and are thus deprived of the wealth of devotional service to the lotus feet of Hari because they're self-centered. And until we put Krishna in the center, it's still a form of sense enjoyment. Even liberation to Brahman is a form of sense enjoyment. It may not be material, but it's it's a worse form because it doesn't give anyone the chance to engage in karma yoga or bhakti yoga. It's the epitome of self-centered or ego, false ego, to merge into the Brahman impersonalism. Even those who are aspiring for material objective goals have a better chance of bhakti yoga practice. Such people cannot, because they deny Krishna. Yes, it's Saturday. We're on holiday. They cannot expect any success from their laborious practices. Before the advent of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the renunciates and ascetics were bereft of devotional service to Hari. And it's stated in Narada Pancharatra, if one is worshipping Lord Hari, what is the use of severe penances? One is not worshipping Lord Hari, what is the use of severe penances? If we're worshipping Krishna, we don't need to do all these other things. And if you do know all these other things, it doesn't lead to service of Lord Hari, it's useless also. They're no value. All these paths are useless unless they lead to devotional service to Krishna. And if one cannot understand that Lord Hari is all-pervading, what is the use of severe penances? Krishna everywhere. He's everywhere. We've got to see him everywhere by utilizing everything in his service. Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna tells Uddhava, being neither very disgusted with, nor attached to material life, one should achieve perfection through the path of loving service unto me, or loving devotion. And the cultivation of knowledge and renunciation is generally not the means of achieving the highest perfection within this world. It can be. It is not generally, because people are so otherwise motivated. There's another nice verse in the 10th canto, spoken by Lord Brahman. We're probably near the end here. Shreya Shrutim Bhaktimudasya Te Vibho Krishandiye Kevala Bodha Labdaye Te Samasol Kleshala Eva Shishyate Nanyadhyatastula Tasavago Praktinam. My dear Lord, devotional service unto you is the best path for self-realization. If someone gives up that path and engages in the cultivation of speculative knowledge, he will simply undergo a troublesome process and will not achieve his desired result. As a person who beats an empty husk of wheat cannot get grain, one who simply speculates cannot achieve self-realization. His only gain is trouble. Purport. Foolish is the person who throws his mind again and again into the pursuit of knowledge without surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is the very substance and goal of knowledge. One may argue that by practicing yoga, cultivating impersonal knowledge, one can acquire prestige, wealth, mystic power, even impersonal liberation. But these so-called gains are actually useless because they do not situate the living being in his constitutional position of loving service to the Supreme Lord. The goal of all yoga is we can see in the first canto of Bhagavatam, the goal of all yoga is Krishna. The goal of all everything, karma, everything is Krishna. The goal of renunciation, the goal of study, the goal of charity, the goal of penance, the goal of everything is to reach Krishna. So unless the path reaches Krishna, although in principle the path of yoga, Stanga yoga, Jnana yoga, everything is meant to reach Krishna. The practitioner, that's another thing. It depends on their motivation and it depends on the mercy of Krishna. So let us take the easy path. Why should we take the the hard path. And probably someone say, if you want to touch your nose, why go like this to try to touch your nose when you can just go like this? Or if you go up a tall building, why go up steps, 100 stairs, just to the left, straight up? So Bhakti Yoga is the recommended simple path, because ultimately all paths must culminate in Bhakti. Otherwise they're useless, waste of time. So when we can take Bhakti now, why not take it now? Instead of in the future, just to waste our time speculating, experimenting, doing all kinds of things to try to control our senses and minds, when they can be ultimately engaged in our eternal constitutional position of devotional service to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Hare Krishna. I will finish there. Thank you very much. Hare Bol. Oh, are we online or not? Maybe we're not online.
No.
Yeah. Okay, here we are again. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you very much. So many understandings here. So many, it's too many. Oh my goodness.
No.
Oh, okay, that was. Where are we?
Start here.
Hare Krishna. If anyone has anything, yeah, there we go. Singapore devotees. Zoom. Okay, thanks. You had mentioned that liberation is not the goal. Is this only for advanced devotees? Srila Prabhupada seems to explicitly encourage us to have goal, going back home, back to God. Please correct my notes. Well, there's an interesting conversation between Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when there's this famous verse, Mukti Bade Sadaya Bhak, Tatenu Kampam Susamikshaman Bunjana Vikatavi Bhakam. It's a famous verse in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, and 14th chapter, I think, also. And there is, Prabhupada said this verse is a guideline for all devotees. It's the mood of a devotee. He doesn't ask the Lord for anything. He just accepts his lot and just continues with his devotional service to Krishna, not expecting or demanding anything, just tolerating and thinking that the Lord is very kind, I deserve to suffer so much more. The last line is Mukti Pade Sadai Bhak. So he becomes eligible to attain liberation, or going back to Godhead. Now in that verse, when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya heard that verse, he changed the word to Bhakti. The Mukti Pade, changed the Bhakti Pade. I don't want Mukti. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was a jnani. He was studying and he had monistic tendencies. He was thinking the purpose of knowledge, the purpose of everything is to merge into the all-pervasive Brahman. He had monistic tendencies. And they thought that jnana, Bhakti is just for foolish idiots who haven't got any capacity to understand things. And it's really, you have to have jnana. Lord Chaitanya, you're just a sentimental young man. You've got to learn jnana from me. So you're going on. But then Lord Chaitanya, by his association, he completely converted Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, transformed it. And to such an extent, when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya saw this word, mukti pade, he couldn't tolerate the word mukti, meaning liberation. And he scratched it out and put bhakti in there. And Lord Chaitanya got on his case. He said, you can't do that. This is a Shastric verse. But I can't stand this name mukti anymore. Because it refers to personal liberation almost in everyone's mind. But it doesn't have to. So the real meaning for a Vaishnava of bhakti is the same as going back to liberation. For a Vaishnava is not merging into Brahman. For a Vaishnava, liberation is not just freedom from karmic reaction. It's not just freedom from the modes of nature. And there's only one liberation, that's to be eternally situated at the lotus feet of the Lord, engaged in eternal devotional service. So Lord Chaitanya explained for a devotee, that's what liberation means. But it's just in general terminology, there's a difference between the two in people's minds. They see it slightly differently, or they see it differentially. Oh, that's yours level, but actually above that is Brahman, or whatever. They have different concepts like that. Krishna says, I am the source of Brahman. In the Bhagavad Gita, this Brahman is coming from me. So ultimately it's me. He's the source of everything. He's the source of everything. So for a devotee, it's liberation. It's not contradictory, just maybe misunderstood. If one doesn't directly go to Krishna, but still continue to do pious deeds and strives in philanthropical activities, does he have any chance in his life to go back home, back to Godhead? Well, it depends again here what we're meaning. In of itself, philanthropical and charitable activities are totally material, 100% material. But if, for instance, one spiritual master is engaging one in activities which may be judged, for instance, prasad distribution may be judged as being philanthropic. It may be judged that, devotees with particular talents are helping people from a material perspective as well as a spiritual perspective, but it's not. Devotional service is not. It can pervade every single activity of the world, not just any activity. You mentioned philanthropic because that generally is understood to be welfare activity, which is materially beneficial and maybe elevating materially, maybe. But for a devotee, whatever activity we're engaging, it's not like this activity is in a particular mode and that activity is not. For a devotee who's acting as Arjuna was supposed to be in the mode of passion, but Krishna said you fight. From the point of view of material perspective, that doesn't sound very transcendental. But it's completely transcendental. He's under Krishna's direction. So whether a devotee is doing this activity or that activity, it's always as Krishna says in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and all your activities just depend on me. Work under my protection. This way you'll attain me. Work under it all by my mercy. Devotee works under the protection of Krishna, whatever activity we're doing. So if one's acting in that way, then yes, even if we are engaged in various, we may be nurses, we may be doctors, we may be welfare workers, whatever it is in the material sense of the term. But when we're doing it in the consciousness of Krishna, and then we can go back to Godhead. But if we're just doing it, thinking this is the most important thing, then we'll remain in the material world. Maybe we'll get a better body, but we'll stay until we realize that this is and not our real business to become philanthropists or to become learned scholars or to become welfare workers or whatever. We encourage people, even in the 12th chapter, Krishna describes there, if you can't do this, you do this, you work for me. If you can't do that, you try to give up your fruits of your work and so on to some charm. Prabhupada describes some charitable activity. It can be a stage towards bhakti. It can be a stage. It can be a platform which is more favorable, because if one has that mentality of giving, it's very useful. It's very helpful in devotional service. And we see, to be honest, I find so many nurses and doctors around the world have, many devotees are coming from that background. Many. Because there's something there. They want a little bit, maybe material, a little bit of selflessness, and probably encourage it. At least it's something. But it's not the goal. It may be a little something which may help one to become a little bit more inclined or more favorable when we come in contact with devotees. In case one follows Krishna conscious way, still engaged himself in piety, that's the same question. Same question, isn't it? Yeah, it's the same question. It can help us, yes. Well, it can. It can also divert our attention. I know a lot of people who, become attached to the mode of goodness rather than Krishna consciousness. They adopt the mode of goodness or even the mode of passion, even worse, the mode of ignorance. They become attached. They start to use modes of nature in the name of devotional service. And then if you're not very, it's like Bharat Maharaj was an extreme example. Prabhupada describes that Bharat Maharaj was very on high level of bhakti, partly on Bhava Bhakti, but he fell down. Why did he fall down? Because he became attached to this compassionate mode, as Arjuna was becoming compassionate, material compassion, became attached. Material compassion can be there in a sense, but you can't become attached to it. He became affectionate towards the mode of goodness, and he gave shelter to the little fawn. And Arjuna was becoming attached to this idea too of no violence and so on, material concept. And he basically fell down. Krishna picked him up again. And Prabhupada said, because Dhruva Maharaj did not consult with a transcendental personality at that time, he fell down. It wasn't the activity, it wasn't what he did, it was how he did it, and then mindset. So because he did not consult with a spiritual master, Prabhupada uses the word at that point in time, and thus he fell from his devotional practices. And so that's the important secret. It's not what we do, but is it actually
pleasing to Krishna. And that we find out from the pure devotee. Sometimes it may be, sometimes it may not. We can't speculate on that one. But generally speaking, what happens is people become very attached. Oh, I'm a musician. I'm going to do music for Krishna. And they end up going back to becoming a musician. Or I'm going to be, a welfare worker, and they end up becoming a mundane welfare worker, animal protector, whatever it may be, and forget one's actual goal, or the ultimate goal of everything, because whatever we do in this world is temporary, and it doesn't really benefit anyone. They're going to die in ignorance and to go to another body, simple as that. So the real welfare work, the real philanthropist is one who, even if they are working in certain areas like that their main goal is to help people become Krishna conscious. And certainly their goal is to become Krishna conscious, not to be seen as a nice person, not to be seen as a kind person or whatever. Not the goal of bhakti. If that comes automatically, it comes automatically. But that's not the goal. The goal is to please Krishna, to do what he wants. We can't speculate. Oh, Krishna, we had a dream. Krishna told me in my dream I should be, whatever, mid-nurse or something. If you're already a mid-nurse, fine. Do it for Krishna. But not that we have to become one. It's not something which favors or embellishes devotional service, but it can be used in devotional service. We will kindly explain the difference between Sankhya and Jnana. Well, I'm not a Sankhya or a Jnana yogi. Jnana is knowledge, studying of scriptural, of different scriptures to try to understand the truth, Vedanta Sutta and so on. The Sankhya Yoga is studying the phenomena, but again, not completely devoid. It's not completely devoid of direction from a realized platform. The Jnana is more specific in terms of the pursuit of knowledge in the Vedantas and the Vedas and so on and so forth. The Sankhya is more studying the phenomena. Huh?
Question if you want to speak.
I guess there's more questions here. Position of a person who's just trying to serve, struggling with his anarthas, but still serving devotees, trying to follow regulated principle and hearing and chanting, although still struggling sometimes with anartha. Is that the question? I just request you to clarify. Okay. Lucky person. You're a lucky soul. You're serving the devotees. You can't have a luckier situation than that. Generally, the Jnanis and the Sankhya Yogis, they don't serve the devotees. Generally speaking, they may even look down on them. They may even reject bhakti or just think it's another path, not for me. Depends. So they very fortunate if you were doing that. What is an anartha? Everything else is an anartha unless it's pleasing to Krishna. Everything. Even the desire to merge into Brahman, everything's an anartha unless it's a desire to serve Krishna. So if you have that genuine desire, you're a lucky soul. Even if there's some temporary. We were reading the other day, Prabhupada said, some of my students, they're still smoking cigarettes. So, never mind. Their main intention is they're so sincerely trying to serve me. This will go away in due course of time. He made little of it. He didn't take it very big. Not that we should therefore, okay, I'm going to go and smoke cigarettes, fine. I don't need to worry. No, but persons who are doing it, they're addicted or they've had been addicted or whatever, it may take some time. Anartha, try to engage them if you can in Krishna service. Try to engage them if you can, but sometimes they can be engaged. They can help us to become more humble because we realize that we can't overcome these anarthas on our own. And they can inspire us to take more shelter of Krishna, not less, and become humble. I'm so fallen. And we've seen many, I don't want to get into it, we've seen many examples of devotees who've had anarthas manifested in practical terms, not just in the heart. And they become full, but Krishna never forgets that service which one's done to his pure devotee. It's a very rare thing. One moment of devotional service is more valuable than all these austerities, learning, knowledge, and everything, etc. It's such a valuable opportunity to get that one moment of chanting or hearing in the association of devotees is so valuable. That's our eternal constitutional gift, which we've been giving a little sample of. We may not realize it, but it's a sample of our absolute constitutional position, which the pure devotees are giving us a chance to savor. You don't get that in Jnana Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga. Maybe some relief is there, some exhilaration of the soul becoming delivered from the modes of nature or something. Whatever the path may be, different persons. But the result of devotional service is neha pikamo nashasti prativana viddhate. It saves a living entity from all of this birth and death, and ultimately from any whatever. But we're sure to go back to Godhead eventually. Become Krishna conscious. You're very lucky. So advice for those devotees who still have anarthas is carry on chanting Hare Krishna. Don't get too mental about your anarthas. Just try to engage yourself positively in devotional service as much as you can, and be humble. And try to chant the holy name and serve the devotees. Eventually this is the gateway to pure devotional service to devotees and chanting the holy names. Anything else? Is that it? Okay, well, our time is over time. I'd like to thank you all very, very much. I wish I could be there in Singapore with you in a sense, although we're kind of together. Maybe if any of you are still there. And we're happy here. I'm in France. Generally speaking, being in France is not the most, for myself, wouldn't be my first choice, but because Krishna's here and Prabhupada's here, service is here, and devotees are here. We have technology to communicate outside of where we are. It's also very fortunate. So some of you are in New Zealand, some of you are in Singapore, some are in England, Scotland, Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, Fiji, and where else are you? America, India. I don't know where everybody is here. Different countries, Europe, some devotees in Europe, all different parts of the world. We have to thank, we're indebted also to the persons who created these modern technologies, and by using them in Krishna's service, they're both benefited. Those who provide these facilities get benefited also. And we're also paying our debts automatically by using them in Krishna's service. The previous class was primarily around this tendency that we have, or this reality that we all have debts to pay to each other in this world. So how are we going to pay those debts? Just by some karmic activity, some prayaschita? No. By absorbing ourselves in devotional service to Krishna and sharing that with others. To human society, we become free by sharing Krishna consciousness with others, giving everyone a chance to connect to Krishna, whatever way we can. Okay. Thank you, Sudamavi Prabhu, if you're still there. I don't know if you're there or not, I can't see. Thank you, Rasikananda, for being the mediator go-between. Thank you, everyone who's here, or online or offline, or whatever you're on. I hope you're on the right line, and keep on the right line. Don't get off that right line. Keep chanting Hare Krishna. Hold on to the holy name. Everything else will go away. Your anarthas, well, everything, anything which appears to be a disturbance, don't worry. Just hold on to the holy name and serve the Vaishnavas. And please try to be humble. Don't offend other people. Don't offend any living entity. If there's any fault, is their own. Look at your own heart. And Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj would emphasize this over and over and over again. When faults in others delude and bewilder you, look within. Look at your own heart. It's only Krishna showing us. He's showing us through others that we have, anarthas in our heart. Patience, humility, respect for others. Take this verse, Trinadapi Sinichena, he said. This is our shelter in chanting the holy name. Be humble, tolerant, and respectful. Don't offend others, even if we think there's a reason to. There's not. And we got to look at our own. One time, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj was asked the question. One of his disciples said, Gurudev, should we use anger against those who are envious of Krishna? We hear this sometimes. Utilizing that mode of anger, passion, and ignorance against those who are envious of Krishna. Arjuna was told to do it. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, yes, we should. But first of all, we have to see who is envious of Krishna. And when I look at my own heart, I find no one more envious of Krishna than my own self. Then he said, so who should we use anger on? To whom should we use anger? Not that we become angry with ourselves, but we should use that, let's say, that potency to purify our hearts, at least to help us become humbled. Become humbled. That I am an offender. I do have material desires. I'm not a good devotee. But we take shelter of the pure devotees and beg for their mercy. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada.